overcoming anxiety takes time is really, really empowering to that whole process and to my child, as well as walking alongside my child without rushing through it. Because we want quick answers, and yet that doesn't happen when we're working with very debilitating mental health challenges. If your child struggles with anxiety, I am here to tell you that you are not alone and you are not powerless. I'm going to give you 6 ways to support your child's anxiety on the home front, as well as I'm going to at the very end give you this catchphrase that I always used. I am Dr. Suzanne Simpson, and this is Get on Their Turf podcast, and it's based on my doctoral research at a youth psychiatric unit where I worked with students in crisis. And I'm also talking today what I learned from my own daughter of how we can help our kids with anxiety. Keep in mind, anxiety has doubled in diagnoses around the world. We know since the early 2010s, it is rampant, and a lot of us don't understand it if we've not had it ourselves. So here's number 1, and stay with me till the end, because what I tell you at the end is what I found so empowering for kids. Number 1, validate your child's emotions. It's real, even if you don't understand it. Don't dismiss or minimize it, which is so easy to do for your child who's experiencing particularly debilitating anxiety that maybe can't get them out of the house, or they're terrified to go through the school hallways to get to class. It is real. You know, I did a great podcast, I thought, with this amazing psychiatrist, Dr. Jordan Cohen, and he said to me, anxiety is always imagining the worst case scenario. So for your child, walking through the day picturing the worst case scenario is exhausting. So to validate that experience really helps them at least feel understood. You know, I didn't actually do this with my daughter. My mistake was I thought she's being melodramatic. Oh, here we go again. And what she really needed was for me to at least acknowledge something that I didn't understand. So what happens is we need to balance having empathy for that and also being just grounded and solid for our kids. Here's number 2, is to become that safe space for your child and be that safe space. So here's where the grounding comes in that I just mentioned, just to be on a solid rock for your kid. As the safe parent, it is so important you are listening and empathetic, even if you don't get it, to sit with your child, that they can tell you how they're feeling, and there is that safety. But also, a safe home is that it is calm, stable, and private. So I used to give my daughter timeouts, and she was really terrified of being alone. And it was the worst thing I could have done, because what I did is I just built up her anxious fears by the timeouts, which for her didn't work, and it just brought so much fear. A really important thing on the home front, and I speak from experience, is that we avoid conflict in the household. We have to learn that. Man, that's hard. But I found that when my husband and I had conflict, or even if my voice raised a little bit, the effects were enormous on my daughter, so that I had to learn how to keep my voice solid. You know, I was a teacher, and I'd be so upset waiting for my kids late. I was raising my voice early morning to get to school. I had to completely change my attitude about that, because what I was doing to my daughter with that raised voice and that conflict, it's really hard to learn emotional regulation, but I think it's really important to create those safe spaces that we have to, because we have to lean into our kids. So guarding my tone of voice, being steady, again, grounded, calm. Here's something else, and I learned this from a student that I had. I asked her for parenting advice, and she said, do not barge into your child's bedroom. It becomes an unsafe space, and the bedroom has to be a safe space. So I've also become quite opposed personally to pulling off the door from your child's room, because they need a safe space. They need somewhere to go, to be alone, and know that you're not going to barge in on them. So consider that practice if you do it. I then, because of this student that had told me this, I always knock still on my kids' dorm room, because I want to respect that space for them. what the student said to me is, my dad would barge in my room, and you know what I did? I'd go hang out with my 5-year older boyfriend in his apartment and make bad decisions instead of being home because I didn't feel safe at home. Because when kids don't feel safe at home, they're going to look elsewhere and maybe enter into more unsafe places. Here's number 3. We have to be vulnerable and willing to be a learner of what we don't understand and what we don't know. So we have to admit that we're imperfect. I think that goes a long way. I'm not perfect, or I don't understand this. I don't get what this is like for you. And part of this, and I say this very gently, I have seen in the middle of both education and the mental health sector, I was there for 5.5 years, we can't fully trust our system. And I say that because of just we humans are infallible. We teachers are infallible. I have seen mental health practitioners infallible. It's just the way that it is across the board. So to be open to what also we can do on the home front to support. So by that I mean learning. For example, there's this amazing therapy called cognitive behavior therapy. I'm all about seeing a professional clinician for cognitive behavior therapy, CBT, and I do have a former podcast with Judy Belmont all about what CBT is and how we do that at the home front. We can learn how to help our kids through their anxious thoughts. We can learn how to respond in that moment and challenge our kids' thinking so that they can work through their thought processes, which is what CBT is. Another thing to learn, it's called dialectical behavior therapy. Another podcast, Liz Cave on audio. DBT is when our kids particularly are suicidal, or we do it with self-harm, eating disorders. It's a branch out of CBT where it's focusing on emotions and emotional regulation. So I, as a mom, learned this in layperson's terms at home to support my daughter with emotional regulation. I am not saying we do this only. I'm saying that we become the learner to just add on to what we hope that a clinical counselor, talk therapist will do. All of this takes time, but it's things that we can do on the home front to support. So there is so much online about this. I will share this in the links below. Really, one of the most powerful assets you have as a parent is your own willingness to learn these techniques and strategies. I know we're busy. I know we're tired. There's so much so even in podcasts that you can learn just on audio. The 4th way to support your child's anxiety is to communicate and ask questions. I did not do this as well as I could have with my daughter. What are you feeling right now? Could have been better questions that I asked. Or what is it in this moment that makes the situation scary? Or what would help you right now? Because when I ask questions, it brings understanding. It also, going back to earlier, number 1 is to validate. It validates my child's emotions because I'm learning more about it so that it's real versus pretending that it doesn't even exist, which is completely invalidating. I wish that I had had more curiosity to bring that understanding and help my own ownership with what my daughter was going through. I wish I'd asked more questions. I wish I had been more inquisitive. I wish that I had just a better understanding that I needed to understand more of what I did not understand. Number 5 is to seek professional support. I know I have said before that you don't want to trust the system, and I still stand by that, but I still believe in our professionals. I believe in our human professionals. A referral goes such a long way. And let's take note, like there's so much black market advice out online right now. So I am talking about seeking a credible source of a professional that can do talk therapy or do cognitive behavior therapy or be in a DBT, dialectical behavior therapy group session and learn those coping tools because there really is fantastic professional support out there. I want to add about medication, and this came from the psychiatric unit. I heard the psychiatrist say this all the time. It is a tool in the toolbox. I want to add more of what I talked about with the kids is that it can't just be medication. It cannot be just medication but it is a tool in the toolbox and can be very useful. But that, coupled with talk therapy, clinical counseling, a psychologist working with you, is adding more to that toolbox to support further. And then you learn those tools from home. We're doing a triple whammy there. The parents, then, you can learn alongside with your child, with that therapist. I did that. I'd go for tips. I'd go for strategies. Tell me what to say in this moment. I worked with a psychologist who was phenomenal in helping my own growth. And he would sit with me and just, when I'm at home, I'm on the front lines. What do I say? So that growth with a child, and if your child is in therapy, just plan that you're going to, because parenting is practice. It is being present. And with that presence, it is just practicing over and over. And here is number 6, to learn and relearn patience. Because I will tell you, my experience is anxiety for me has been very frustrating to watch and to navigate. Yet my impatience does no service at all to my daughter. So that my understanding that overcoming anxiety takes time is really, really empowering to that whole process and to my child, as well as walking alongside my child without rushing through it. Because we want quick answers, and yet that doesn't happen when we're working with very debilitating mental health challenges. So even allow for that exposure therapy, that patience of you're practicing touching the school wall, and then you're going to practice going into the front door, and then you're going to practice walking through the hallway. Just the patience involved in that whole process. And it's really important that we stop blaming or getting frustrated of the lack of progress, and let's just focus on where that progress is with your child. Because when your kids see your own understanding of the process, and when your kids watch you be patient, I believe that they see hope and resilience, and that, again, you were that foundation, that rock for them. Good enough parenting is enough. I had this great psychologist tell me about his strong belief that if you love your kids unconditionally and you are present and you show up, even though we all make mistakes, that's what they want. You don't have to be perfect. We don't have to flog ourselves and live in constant regret, but we need to be present. And he said to me, I've never once seen a parent in a family situation where that parent really fought for their kid and loved their kid. I've never seen that go bad. I've never seen broken relationships over it. Here is the closing takeaway. And this is what I worked all the time with the kids on that psychiatric unit in my classroom. I said, in this moment, 3 words, in this moment. So for example, I'd be working on assignments with them. In this moment, we're just actually going to read this paragraph. Kids with debilitating anxiety over the reading, to see a whole page is a lot. So let's stop. We'd cover up all the other paragraphs, and there's a single paragraph. And it was in this moment, we're just going to look at this one paragraph together. Or I did this when my daughter was afraid to walk in and just grade 9, and it's so stressful and getting through the hallways to the class. And it would be a dialogue about, in this moment, all I want you to do is I just want you to focus to get through the hallway to class. That's all you're doing. Front door, through the hallway, sit in your seat. You're not thinking past that because it's too much. Or in this moment, you are just going to look for this job rather than the immensity of having to find a job, because in this moment whittles away everything else. One of the things of anxiety is it's just overwhelming. So those 3 words, in this moment, can change everything, because it takes away all that other clutter, all the other stressful components, and whittles it down. That's it for this week, and join me next week for a podcast interview, and subscribe to this channel if you want more tips and tools to help connect with your child and support their mental health. Share this with somebody that needs to hear it, supporting their kid with anxiety, and I will see you next time.